Okay. Boker Tov. Good morning, everybody joining us for Lechtecha Baderech and everywhere else. Okay. So we are in Masechet Beit Tzad Chaf Zayin Amud Aleph. Okay, we're dealing with the sugya again of checking Bechorot on Yom Tov. So what we saw was as follows. We saw that we have a machloket between Rabbi Shimon and Rabbi Yehuda going all the way back. And then we saw a number of Amoraim who seem to paskin like the stringent opinion to say that we can't check B'chorot on Yom Tov. Sorry, just one moment. Oh, back. Okay, so we saw that we have a machloket between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Shimon regarding checking mumin on Yom Tov. So then we saw that there are a number of Amoraim, etc., who paskin like the stringent opinion to say that we can't. So the question was why? Because why don't we paskin like Rabbi Yehuda? So we said the following. Let's pick it up on Daf Chaf Zayin Amud Aleph, maybe about halfway down the page. Right, we saw it said Amar Rav Yosef Tashma Natalia Ba'ashlei Rav Levei Tamar B'Shimon ben Pazi Amar B'Yeshua ben Levi Amar B'Yossi ben Shaul Amar Levi Mishum Kila Kadisha Div Yerushalayim Rabbi Shimon v'Chavavamo Halacha Rabbi Meir. Okay, with this very cryptic statement here, with the Gemara said that Rabbi Shimon v'Chavavamo Halacha Rabbi Meir. Well, the Kala Kadisha Yerushalayim, right? And then the Gemara asked, it said, Amar v'ha'inu k'shishay minei tova. Meaning, what do you mean that they're saying that Rabbi Shimon said Rabbi Meir? We explained Ela v'shitat Rabbi Meir Amra. In other words, what they're saying is that what Rabbi Shimon said was actually following the opinion of Rabbi Meir. Meaning, it's not just Rabbi Yehuda versus Rabbi Shimon. It's Rabbi Yehuda versus Rabbi Shimon and Rabbi Meir. And therefore, it's not it's a majority opinion that we have. Ditnan, what does Rabbi Meir say? And how does Rabbi Meir, that's our whole discussion, how does Rabbi Meir square up with the opinion of Rabbi Shimon regarding checking for a mum on Yom Tov? Ditnan, השוחט את הבכור, ואחר כך יראה את מומו, רבי יהודה מתיר, ורבי מאיר אומר, אוהב ונשחט, שלא על פי מומחה אסור. So this is the Mishnah Bechor. It said as follows. It said, השוחט הבכור, somebody who shechts a bechor, and only afterwards shows the mum to a mumche, right? Meaning it's meant to be the other way around. You're meant to see the mum first. So השוחט הבכור, ואחר כך ראה את מומו, רבי יהודה מתיר, ורבי מאיר אומר, אוהב ונשחט, שלא על פי מומחה אסור. So Rabbi Yehuda says this is now mutar, and Rabbi Meir says no. Rabbi Meir says Ohev Nishchat Shelo B'Mumcha. So Alma because of Rabbi Meir Liyat B'chol Lav Kiliyat Refa. Liyat B'chol Mechayim Liyat Refa Lachal Shchita. So what do we learn from this? We see from here that Rabbi Meir doesn't compare. He says that Riyat B'chol, checking the B'chol for a mum is not like checking a trefa. Riyat B'chor Mechayim, Riyat Trefa Lachar Shchita. The Riyat of the B'chor, you can only do, according to Rabbi Meir, he says you have to do it before you shecht it, you have to do it while it's alive. Whereas Riyat Trefa, you can do after Shchita. So therefore we said, Umina, therefore, from the fact that Riyat Trefa is even after, you can do even after the Shchita, whereas the Riyah of the Bechor you have to do before. So we see the Riyah Bechor is more stringent than the Riyah Trefa. So we say, Mina, learn from this the following, that Riyah Trefa, afilu b'Yom Tov, Riyat Bechor, me'elev Yom Tov. See that seeing the Trefa could be, you could even do that on Yom Tov itself. You can check the Trefa. But Riyat Bechor, you have to do it from before Yom Tov. In other words, what emerges from this Mishnah is, it doesn't say it explicitly, but we learn that the machloket between Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda actually relates to also the question of Riyat Bechor and Yom Tov. That Rabbi Meir is saying you can't check the Bechor on Yom Tov for a mum. And Rabbi Yehuda is the one who says you can. So we've seen machloket now in two different Mishnayot. So we've seen both Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Shimon hold in the same view against Rabbi Yehuda. So that is the proof of the Mishnah. So now says the Gemara, Amar le Abaye. Abaye says, hang on a second, that's not actually what the Mishnah is about. It says Atu hatam belu'in mumin pliga. Who says there that the machloket is about seeing mumin? Atu hatam belu'in mumin pligi. Biknasa pligi. Right? They're arguing about the knas. The Amar Rabba Bar Chana, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Bedukin Sheba'ayin. Okay, so if you have a sort of blemish inside the eye, in the eye of the animal, Kule Amalo Plegi Dasu, Mishum Mishtani. Okay, the question on the Machlok between Rabbi Meir and Yehuda is like this. If you check the mum only after the animal shechted, so if you check the eye after the animal's already dead, so then you aren't able to tell because its appearance is going to change from what it was while it was alive. You're not going to be able to know. Rashi Avia says, right, Kule Alma. He says, Afilu Rabbi Yehuda modeh, Dasu. Even Rabbi Yehuda says, if the mum was something that in the eye and you did not check it before you shechted the animal, you only checked it afterwards, so that's no good. Rabbi Yehuda says, right, why? Because its appearance is going to change after the animal's dead. Right, there's this thing in the eye that after shchita it's going to look like a mum kavua. But if you saw it before shchita, it would look like a mum over. So therefore, right, a mum over is obviously it's going to be more stringent, right? If it's a mum kavua means you can check the animal goes out into chulin. So you're going to check the animal now after it's dead, and you're going to see that it's got this mum in its eye, and you're going to say, it's a mum kavua, it's fine. But actually, it's not a mum kavua, it's a mum veber, and it looks like it afterwards. So the dukin shabayin, that's a problem. That's a problem for everybody, including Rabbi Yehuda. The question is now, if it was a different kind of mum, do we make a gzeira? Do we say that since there was a mum in the eye, and therefore if you checked it after the animal died, then that would be a problem that you can't check any mumim afterwards? Because if you're checking other mumim, you might come to check that, and you're going to be lenient, or not. So says the Gemara, right, we are now about 6 lines from the bottom. It says, Kula alma lo plegi dasu mishum nishtanin. Right? Bedukin shaba'ayin kula alma lo plegi dasu mishum nishtanin. Ki plegi b'mumin shabaguf. If it's other mumin that are in the guf of the mema. Rabbi Meir saval gazrin an mumin shabaguf atu mumin shaba'ayin. Rabbi Meir says we make a gzera. Since everybody agrees that a mumin in the eye you're not going to be able to check after mitah, therefore you can't check a mum in the guf either. Rabbi Yehuda says no, the eye is one thing, the body is something else, that's fine. So Amar Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak, matnitin nami daika. In other words, their machloket is about whether we make this gzeira of the eye versus the guf, and that's all. It's not a question of whether you can inherently check or not check the beima for mum yom tov. Okay, so now says Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak, and I'll give you another proof from the language of the Mishnah that this is what they were arguing about. That was how Abaye explained it. We can also learn it from the wording of our Mishnah. Diktani, Rabbi Meir Omer, Ho'il v'nishchat, shelo al pi mumche asur. This is how that's what it said in the Mishnah, right? This Mishnah from Bechorot. Rabbi Meir says, it doesn't just say asur. It says ho'il v'nishchat shelo al pi mumche asur. So what do we have? They say shma mina knas ha'ud kakanis shma mina. Learn from that wording that it says shelo al pi mumche, that is a knas. Okay, so it says Rashi explains over here. It says matnitin the b'cholot nami daika. The Mishnah Bechor we can infer from this as well. The mishum gzeira kasale v'knas kanis. That was because of gzeira and because of the knas. Kadei shelo yalgil od. So that you shouldn't come to keep on. Well, that's the point. That you shouldn't come to keep doing this. Midaloktani Rabbi Meir osel. It doesn't just say in the Mishnah Rabbi Meir says it's asur. Meaning, if we were saying that it's it's inherently forbidden to go and to check for mum on Yom Tov. So which I've just said, but no, דנהווה משמע דיסרו תלוי בגופו, שאין להטו לאחר שחיטה כלום. That's the point, right? If our machloket is whether you are allowed to check for the mumim on Yom Tov, in other words, whether you're allowed to make a tikkun on this animal, that the animal, right, the animal now cannot be eaten, and now you say it can be eaten. Once you've checked for the mum, you're changing its status inherently. And if we say you can't come along and you can't change it, so then you would have just said asur. But yeah, it's not that it's inherently asur. It's that really Rabbanan meant gzera, Rabbanan meant knas. So you shouldn't come to keep doing this because you might come to check it this way. You might come to check if it's a mum in the ayin, and then it will be a problem. So ela hoil v'avaru v'shchato shma min hazeta moshe davar v'bnei shekel shachto. The problem is that you went and you were lenient and you went and you tried to do this harama. V'tala Rabbi Meir hadavar b'rish'o shel kohen zeh shekel bo. Okay, this kohen who came along and was lenient, that was the problem. Okay, so now says the Gemara like this. We have another story. 3 lines from the bottom. 3 lines from the bottom. It says, Ami Vardina Chazi Buchla de Venesia. Okay, so somebody called Ami Vardina. It's an interesting name. Why is he called Ami Vardina? So either he came from a place that was called Vardina, or Rashi says, Ami Vardina, like the word Vered is like a rose. He says, Na'eh Haya was a good person, and therefore Al Shem Vradim Haya Nikran. He was called just like roses, of a pleasant fragrance, right? So too, this person was like that. That's one interpretation of where the name comes from. Rashi tells me, but Rashi doesn't like that interpretation. He says, "Linile me'oto makom sheshmo Valdina, ki omrim ba'eluvin, shnikra me'anshei Valdina." He says that was the name of the place, and actually, these me'anshei Valdina v'anashim tzakanim v'tzalei ayin v'mamonam hayu. Right. Apparently, the people of Vardina were quite stingy with their money, whatever it was. So he says, he would check. He would check the bechorot of the Venesia, of the house of the Nasi. That was his job. He was the bechor checker. Okay. B'yom matava lo avachazi. On Yom Tov, he would not check. He wouldn't check the bechor for mum on Yom Tov. Rabbi Ami, and they told Rabbi Ami, they said this Ami Varna, he doesn't go, he won't check the Bukhara on Yom Tov. Right? Amarlo Shapira Kavid Telo Chazi. Rabbi Ami said, very good, he's doing the right thing, that he's not checking. So it says Rabbi Ami Gufei Chazi. But what do you mean? Rabbi Ami himself would go and he would check Bechorot on Yom Tov. How can you say, right? This Ami Vardana, two different people, both called Ami, right? Ami Vardana would not check the Bechorot on Yom Tov. And they told Rabbi Ami. Rabbi Ami said he's doing the right thing. That's correct. But the Gemara says, but how can that be? Because Rabbi Ami himself would not, Rabbi Ami would check. So says the Gemara, no. Rabbi Ami, ki chazi me'etmol hava chazi. So actually, Rabbi Ami would go, he would check the Bechor on Erev Yom Tov. And Erev Yom Tov, he would check if it's, says Rashi Rabbi Ami, etmol hava chazi, im kavua im over, if it's fixed or a passing blemish. And Tamid Bet. Ube Yom Tov, so what would you on Yom Tov? Ube Yom Tov, shiuli kamash meshayel, hechi hava uvda. On Yom Tov, he would go back to the Kohen and then he would ask him, right, how did it happen? Where did the mum come from? Meaning, he would make sure to check and to see the mum before, but he had to go and ask him on Yom Tov as well. So says Rashi over here, but Yom Tov surely kameshaya. Pe'amim shiat alud be'el Yom Tov. Sometimes it happened. Would you believe it? It's possible, but the Rav is busy on Erev Yom Tov. But you'd be surprised. People don't know. But so he said he was sometimes on Erev Yom Tov, so he didn't have time. Umishra'ah mumin. He would see the mum and he would say to the person, go now, come back tomorrow. And then he would ask him about the mum. How did the mum come about? Why do we have to ask how it came about? מפני שנחשדו כהנים ala b'cholot latil bahem mum. Okay, the Mishnah Bechor tells us that they was suspicious of the Kohanim that they would purposely inflict a mum on the Bechor in order so that they could have the animal, right? Kol hamumim olim lavo b'dei adam, meaning all the types of mumim which could have come from a person. Ro'ei Yisrael ne'emanin, ro'ei Kohanim ein ne'emanim. V'tarich la'avi edim sheme'elav balo. And he would need to come along and bring witnesses, bring edim that this mum just came about by itself. He didn't go and inflict it himself. So therefore, that's what Rabbi Ami would do. He would go and he would investigate and he would check with them and he would ask them. That would be on Yom Tov itself. But he would actually look at the mum. That would be before Yom Tov. Okay, another story. Similar case. It says ki ha the ha'u gavra. This is like the case of the following individual. The aiti bucha lekamei de Rava. Right, he brought his bechor now to Rava to check. Apanya demale yoma tova.
What? Who?
Apanya demale yoma tova. Right, this was towards nightfall, towards the coming in at the beginning of Yom Tov. So hava yativ Rava v'kach hayef leisha. Rava was sitting there and he was chayef leisha. He was washing his hair, right? He was washing it, getting ready for Yom Tov. Dali eine v'chazia lemuma. He had a look, right? He lifted up his eyes and he saw the mum. So Amale zil ha'idna v'talem achai. He said to him, "Go now. What are you doing here? It's Erev Yom Tov. Go right, finish getting ready, and come back tomorrow." Tomorrow being Yom Tov. So he came back the next day and he said to Rava. Rava said to him, he said, Heichi hava uvda. How did it happen? Where did this animal get a mum from? So the owner of the animal, of the buchor, said, Hava shadyan sale behach gisa de hutza. Okay, so they were havashadian. They were throwing sarei, sorim, like barley, right, grains, on one side of a fence. Be'achgisa de hutza, sort of a fence of or a hedge, right, of thorns. V'hava'iu be'idach gisa, and the bechor, this animal's on the other side. V'hadei devayla mechal. Right, and it came along to eat. It was coming to eat these sorim that they were throwing. So it put its head through the fence, through the hedge, whatever it was, and that was how it's got a cut. That's how it got its mum. That's how it's got a cut on its lips. He said that maybe you caused it. In other words, maybe the story you're telling me doesn't quite square up. Maybe it was this was a man-made thing. So he says no. So what do we say from there? Again, that's the same as the case that we had before by Rabbi Ami. They would have to go and they would have to ask the Kohen and make sure that it's not that the mum came by itself. So now the Gemara says, where do we learn this? Who says where does this thing come from? Right? Mena Taimra the Grama Asur. Who says that if you cause the mum on a bechor, then that would be asur. That doesn't count, right? So the Tanya, the pasuk says, right, it says mum lo yebo, mum lo yebo. So ainli ela shelo yebo mum. I only know from there that it doesn't have a mum. Minayin shelo yiglom lo alidei davar acher shelo yavi batzek או דבלה ויניח לו על גבי האוזן כדי שיבוא כלב ויתלנה. So, in other words, right? How do I know that it's only talking about? It says mum lo yebo. That could be anything. How do I know that you can't go and cause it? Minayin shelo yiglom lo al yedei davar acher, caused by something else. So the example is shlovi batzek. You take a dough, right, or dveila, or dried figs, and you place it on the ear of this animal. A dog is going to come and is going to eat it and it's going to bite it, and then it's going to have a mum. on the animal. So Talmud Lomar Kol Mum. Right? The pasuk says, Amar Mum Ve'amar Kol Mum. In other words, you can't. In other words, they're saying this: you cannot go and directly place a mum on the animal. You can't go and indirectly place a mum on the animal. What we're talking about is if it happened and happened by itself, but not something that you can go and that you're allowed to go and cause. Rashi says here, just the last Rashi for the Mishnah. He says, etc. He says, "Ikadav mum v'lo kadav kol." If it had just said mum and hadn't said kol, so lo yalo so grama. Then I would have said what's prohibited is directly causing a mum, but not doing it right, indirectly, like this case we just gave. Says mum say you can't go and place a mum. And kol mum means even if you did it indirectly as well. Okay, we'll stop there. That takes us through to the next Mishnah. We'll start tomorrow, Be'ezrat Hashem, from the Mishnah. Have a wonderful day, everybody.
You too. Be well.